Welcome to the American Intelligence Media. I am Thomas Paine, also known as Douglas Gabriel, and today I'm going to talk about something very scary. It's called the digital prison, and I have the best person in the world to talk with me about this, Michael McKibben. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hi, Douglas. Great to be with you.
You are the person who allowed social interaction on the internet basically to become scalable so that it could go and service billions of people at once. You also know the systems that were created that can disprove Sir Timothy Berners-Lee's nonsense notions that he's going to transform the internet by simply doing more magic like he did the first time when he created the World Wide Web, which he didn't. But he says he's going to change it. And then we have Eric Schmidt, who just got back from China after 750,000 people were killed with his new social credit system, digital social credit system program called Dragonfly. So we wondered whether Eric would actually come back, because what he just did in China was to create a digital totalitarian government that is kind of hell-bent on killing their own populations and making them completely homogeneous. Why? Because that's what a good communist nation does. And so we expect this stuff in the communist China, but then when people said, oh no, this is going to happen here, Eric Schmidt got back. The first words out of his lie were a big fat lie, which the Dragonfly will not actually be operable in China for a few more years. That's a lie. It's not only been operable in China, and we've already seen it kill the Uyghur people in the northwestern province of China, where they literally locked up 1 million of them because of the look on their face. Because when facial recognition just got put into complete force in China, they literally look at your face and can tell if you are committing a crime or about to commit a crime or have committed a crime according to facial recognition, which is now operative in America. They now let you walk onto planes by simply scanning your face. So what is going on in China is the prefiguring of the total digital Big Brother prison, the what I like to call the cube that Eric Schmidt told us he was going to create for all of us. And he's going to put us in this cube when Google turns to Alphabet, which is going to happen any minute now, because Google's probably going to go down because it's going to be given, billions of dollars of fines like they have been given in other nations. But what Eric Schmidt just did in China was probably going to, it will go down in history as one of the worst digital moments in human history, because it turned humans into nothing more than meat that is remotely controlled, aggressively remote controlled through Richard C. Walker's Internet of Things patent. We already see it. It's now in China. And so I just saw a very long show, where they were talking to people about this. It's already in play, Eric, and they're showing it on the news. And people are saying, this is a wonderful thing. It gives me great convenience. I can just walk in a store, get something off of a shelf, and walk out, and the scanners will send it to me and credit me and debit me. And if I am a good person, if I'm a good communist, then I get total access to everything. But if I'm a bad communist, it literally says this: you're not going to be able to take a step.
Right.
Not a step anywhere, in any direction, economically, socially. Even who you talk to can lower your score just by talking to them. So you talking to me today, Michael, that would lower your credit score. Now, that's happening in China, and it's happening in America.
Maybe we should hang up.
Yeah, you know that they're listening. So we already see this happening in America, but I didn't know that it had happened so thoroughly. So when I saw this thing that you recently released on Edith Ramirez, the head of the FTC, allowing Google and Facebook and all the rest of them to basically surveil you, target you, and attack you. And they put you in silos, they put you in buckets, they give you names, and they see how they can economically manipulate and leverage you by analyzing everything you do in the digital world. And now it's going to be not even in the digital world, because the credit score in China is what you do online and offline, both. And then it comes into play where they can literally pull you over, take your phone, see that you are on WhatsApp, and put you in jail. Because you decide, that's like being on Facebook here in America. So you went onto WhatsApp to talk to somebody. They saw your face looking like, you're not being a good communist. They pull you over and put you in jail. Already happening, folks. It's already happening in Europe, and it's already happening in Britain. And it's coming here because the same exact mechanism used in Europe and in Britain, the Atlantic Council's George Soros stamped and funded system that is being used by Facebook, and Eric Schmidt's system, which we already know was operative in the 2016 election, has been amped up, and now it's in control of every speck of news that comes across your screen. So, Michael, you've been down in the mines for days, and you just keep throwing up this stuff, and as we look at it, we're just shocked, because you've been fighting this dragon, this demon, for 20 years, and it's the same people. So, tell us, how bad is it in America?
It's much worse than it might appear on the surface. And the main reason is because we're dealing in data which nobody can see. It's being collected without our knowledge, largely, and it's being aggregated without our knowledge. And for most of us who are trusting Americans, we expected our regulatory agencies to, especially the consumer agencies like the Federal Trade Commission, to watch over this and to prevent database vendors from abusing this opportunity they have to collect data. What we're learning now is that there has been little to no regulation of the data brokers who have been collecting this data. And I think we all know about the FICO financial score and how that governs whether we can get a loan or not, or whether we've got to go find a cosigner. And so we're familiar with that part. What happened after social networking came into being is that a lot more kinds of data on a person became available. And what has happened, largely without our knowledge, is all of that data has been now combined in with all of the FICO data to create these much richer profiles on every individual. And what we're seeing, as you've talked about in China, is that totalitarian governments are using this data to create a mechanism for I call it digital enslavement, because what they're doing is they're using this credit score kind of like a big game. And if you do certain things, you'll get rewarded with more points. And if you do other things, you'll get points taken away. And so what they're seeing in China is this dopamine culture has even kicked in with this credit score system, so that people will actually start to do things that will increase their credit score, and then they'll go on and check to see if it made their points go up or go down. And so what we see is that this system is actually enslaving people's behavior to the point where they start living for the score instead of living life. And I really blame the people in our country who are fascinated by these subjects and have pursued these subjects with absolutely no morality. And this would be accountants, this would be lawyers, this would be mathematicians, this would be computer scientists who are just fascinated by the possibilities that all this data gives them. And so what they've been doing is, in conjunction with the bankers, is funding companies that will allow them to do more of this. Well, and to take this data, and now they've even created a new term called big data. So they create all of this capability without any guide, without any moral guide, or without any guide related to the Constitution, especially the Bill of Rights and in privacy rights. Because if they were following the Constitution, and especially the right to privacy, they would not be allowed to collect this data without yours and my permission. But what they've done is they've just ignored all that, and with no morality and just a fascination with the capability of doing it. They have done it, and we've had a government that has not been able to keep up with this, and so consequently, we're in this lawless, Wild West environment where these bankers are trying to stay ahead of the sheriff to essentially enslave the entire world population before we figure out how to regulate it.
You mean their standard operating procedure?
Yes.
Which is, control it before it even gets going, make sure you get in on it to make the big money so you can keep a monopoly going. All these tech companies run on Peter Thiel's philosophy, which is there's only one business model, and that is a monopoly. And so what we're seeing here is, for instance, when they said they were hacked, but they stole all the information from places like Equifax or from the Office of Management and Budget from the government or Transamerica, or any of the times that they go in and steal these huge amounts of information, they're simply adding to what you call the dark profile, your individual dark profile. And I like to call it, a digital prison or something, because
right.
He wants to put us in there. That's Eric Schmidt, wants to put us in there and give us everything that we want. And it's going to be so convenient. We're going to have everything. Like when you ask a question.
As long as you're a good little boy.
That's correct. When you ask a question in the future, when it's no longer Google, but it's Alphabet, you'll only get one answer. One correct answer. That's it. And if you want any more information, you're going to have to pay for it. And, it's the myth of net neutrality. And we see it in Europe already, completely taken over with the GDPR law, what they called Article 13, where basically there's no free speech left. None. Zero. They know what you say online. They can come to your door and arrest you because you criticized the migrants. And I'm not exaggerating. This is exactly what's going on. There is no free speech left in Europe, and it's the Atlantic Council.
This system really got going during Obama's time. And they were getting set up during the Bush administration and the Clinton administration, but it really got going after Obama came to power, and he hired a guy as his chief technology officer by the name of Todd Y. Park, who was from Silicon Valley. And Park came in and started promoting something called data paloozas. And the idea was these were these really rah-rah gatherings where he was promoting the idea of unlocking big data within government databases. And so what he did is, over the time while he was Obama's database administrator, basically, is he opened up all sorts of data to these big data vendors. And let me just read you some of the categories that he opened up. He didn't have to ask individuals. He just went and got it right from the agencies that were holding it. In healthcare, weather, space, housing, environment, food, agriculture, disease, commerce, financing, banking, geology, census, law, transportation, disasters, oceans, forests, education, science, research, money, shipping, communication, fish and wildlife, recreation, safety, intelligence, policing, insurance, labor, border protection, patents, copyrights, trademarks, animal life, rail, trucking, automobiles, and manufacturing. That's just a short list.
E-government. Didn't you call
that?
Yes,
that was part of it.
Yeah, it's U.S. Digital Service, which you're the only person who ever really brought that up, that all of these things are now connected through the U.S. Digital Service right into the White House during the election, and they had basically mega data, this big data you're talking about, to analyze, but not only to surveil and analyze, but then to target and attack. And that's the part people don't understand. People say, I don't care that Google allows 100 companies to look at my personal Gmail account and my personal messages. I don't care. I have nothing to hide. Well, if you really knew what they did with it, you would be very concerned. You know that I can buy anybody's Facebook profile for $5? And if I know how to manipulate it through analyzing it with all kinds of tools that you can use, you can basically know more about the person than they know about themselves. You can predict their next question that they're going to put into Google. And this has been proven. So it's a psyops that proved to be a very, very deep, rich vein of subliminal control and manipulation through, as you say, dopamine hits, because these devices are actually literally addictive. And no one's going to look at any of that, because why? It's convenient and it's secure and it's all those nice words that the totalitarian communist government tells people the Dragonfly program is really about. It's about convenience. No, it is about control, remote, aggressive control through anything digital. And that is going to be very soon, when 5G is completely implemented, everything.
Yeah, it's pretty frightening, and most people would, at this point, probably be thinking, well, what can I do about it? And my suggestion is, in general, we must resist it, because if we give in to this, we can kiss our way of life, our Constitution, goodbye. Because these guys have all of the data. They know what we're thinking before we think it, with these algorithms that they can apply to this data. And so by doing that, they are getting very sophisticated at how they control people's behavior and where they go, what they do, who they socialize with. And what we're seeing from the experiences in China is that they are lowering your score if you are having friendships with people that they don't approve of. That if you go to the wrong places, you can lower your score. If you attend certain events, you can lower your score or raise your score. And so the idea here is that they will basically put this digital leash on you, and will hope that you will be guided by the prods that you get, and you will be prodded into this box that will then govern your life. And for those of us who believe in man's free will and believe in the right to privacy, these are anathema to those concepts. And I think here we're starting to see, it's starting to come into focus why these tyrants are focusing on attacking Christianity. They're focused on attacking the U.S. Constitution and anyone who is an advocate of man's free will and self-determination. And so what we have to do is resist this, because if we don't, the alternative is a slavish environment going forward.
You're so right, and we have preached this a bit ourselves, because when you look at a cell phone, it's better than an implant, because everyone willingly puts that cell phone up to their head and basically lives their life according to their cell phone. And then their computer, well, those might as well just be chips put right into your brain. People are willing. Some people can't go to sleep without their computer yakking at them through the whole night. They can't do anything without the computer, and they can't do anything without digital stuff talking to them, telling them basically what to do, everything, whatever. But the point is, it eats up your willpower, and this is what people don't understand. They know for a fact that the longer your child spends on a cell phone or a laptop, the less ability they have for empathy, and basically the less energy they have for anyone else but themselves. So it makes them extraordinarily selfish and extremely uninterested in developing their own imagination, and it zaps their willpower so that they don't have any more willpower to resist, and they don't have any strength of thought to be able to resist what pops up next on the side of their screen and takes them off on the next journey. So we have a huge illness going on, and once 5G gets placed in America in a comprehensive way, every place you go will be known. Everything you do will be known. Every look on your face will be able to be recorded, and it will be held against you. Why? Because there are digital systems that are in place now that are already the globalist systems, and we must break them. We must basically cut the landlines, folks. We got to turn off 5G, and we got to cut the landlines. We got to go backwards. We got to devolve with our digital expansion because it has taken us to such illness and sickness that no one wants to even look at whether 5G causes illness, and it certainly does. 1G causes illness. Any kind of electromagnetic frequency that you are within that field causes illness. So you're right. We have to resist, and it really is much easier than people know. If we go back to your original invention through Leader Technologies, we can see that it was for the advancement of humankind, for freedom, for security, for privacy, all the opposite of what the DARPA and In-Q-Tel turned it into, which is a weaponized form of psyops.
Yeah, it's all about how the features are presented to you. What we originally designed was not to be a tool that interrupted your life, but rather facilitated things you needed to do in your life. So, for example, I used to, back before computers became so sophisticated, I used to do time management training for people. And one of the things in the time management world, in the old days before computers, you noticed in work productivity that most people got interrupted once every 7 minutes. And then it took them 3 minutes to get back into what they were doing before they got interrupted. And so one of the things I used to advocate to my clients was at least dedicate 1 hour a day in your office where nobody interrupts anyone else. You force yourself to do that. And it was like a drug even at that stage because people found themselves were triggered by getting interrupted, and of course that was killing productivity. And we used to get some really ravingly positive reviews of just setting aside that quiet hour in an office environment so that people could get more work done. Well, when computers started putting up these instant messages, I said, this is not good, because if they're getting interrupted once every 7 minutes before computers, and now we've got these notices popping up many times in a minute now through this instant message tool, or through every time an email comes in, it pops up a little message to show you what the email is about. The bottom line is the technology has taken over the communication and the thinking, and just like you're saying, it's sucking our ability to think for ourselves, because it's all we're being triggered to respond like Pavlov's dogs. And so if Pavlov doesn't have my interest at heart, then guess the kind of messages that I'm going to be getting, and that's what we're seeing.
Yeah,
we've got to reconfigure the whole thing to get it back to being an aid and not an interruption.
Absolutely. They talk of it as disruptive now. Everything's disruptive. Everything's good if it's disruptive. What that means is you never have a single thought that is completed, and you are basically entertained, and there's no education going on when you're being passively entertained. And that's the problem with computers and cell phones. I go on and on. Of course, I preach and preach, but let's get back to what you can tell us, because I was earlier today ranting and raving about what's going on over there in China, and Eric Schmidt and James Breyer and the people who went over there early. And I say that China's probably going to take advantage of them, but in the end, China's not going to be the big hero. The dragonfly system of total totalitarian communist control, that's not where the rest of the world is going to go. I believe we're going to stand up and fight, and we're going to win this resistance.
Well, one of the things that's just popped out today is related to China, is their main system for doing a lot of these digital transactions is owned by a company called Ant Financial. You ever heard of them, Ant Financial?
A-N-T? I don't think so.
A-N-T, yes. They are a subsidiary of Alibaba.
Well, I should have known.
Okay. So here's the point. You made the point. You asked me in a recent interview, who was really driving China? Is China driving this, or who is driving this? And let me just tell you what we found about Ant Financial. Its chief investors in Ant Financial, which is running this digital credit scoring system in China, is IDG Capital, which is the Breyers, Excel Partners, and John P. Breyer, his dad, is Sequoia, and if you recall, Sequoia is one of the chief investors in Google. There's Silicon Valley Bank. There's Matrix, which is another big venture capitalist out in California. Intel, Lightspeed, and Mail.ru, which is Yuri Milner's company in Moscow. So what we're seeing there is all the same players that have taken over the digital space in this country are the ones driving what's going on in China. So I think you're right. I think China is the lapdog for this global financial group.
Wow. You always tend to blow our minds. So now you know who is the money behind the Chinese social credit score system. Dragonfly, as it were. I mean, Eric Schmidt is, of course, doing the software and the applications, but it is the money that drives it all. So there they are, the same old criminals that came out of the IBM Eclipse Foundation. That would be James Breyer and his dad's name is John?
John P. Breyer and James W. Breyer.
And John went
father and son.
John went over to China a long time ago. What's he been doing over there?
John has been coaching the Chinese. What we hear is that he's been coaching the Chinese banking system how to create venture capital. Because obviously he's investing in these various deals, and he certainly got his money in the social credit score system, Ant Financial.
Okay, so then he was setting them up. So he got on the ground floor so that the venture capital for these things. I was also mentioning that Tal Piat and so many of these new startups are also in China, and China is just going to take advantage of all of them. And of course, those are Israeli cyber warfare technicians who have tons of venture capital, and so they're all.
So here's another element of this, though. Remember how we were talking about Axiom in Little Rock, Arkansas, the data aggregator, which is it appears that it is the key data aggregator for the planet, and how we discovered that Hillary Clinton's 19-year law partner at the Rose Law Firm is basically the chief operating officer of Axiom. Well, as of October 1st, Axiom moved to China, changed their name to LiveRamp, and it would appear that they have taken all this big data that has been collected on all of us in America and moved it to China, so that they're not in the reach of U.S. law, can manipulate us from afar, but since it's all electronic, they can easily have the data housed somewhere in Asia, and can manipulate America from afar.
Until we turn the cables off.
Right.
You see, they don't understand, because the Chinese are very naive when it comes to capitalism. So in a stock market, at one point when the 5 or 6 top people who are making the most money in the stock market.
When you're talking about Chinese, what I suggested earlier is it's not the Chinese. It is the Silicon Valley banks moved to China, and they're just using China as a launching pad. And the other thing about data, keep in mind, is they don't keep the data just in one spot. They'll keep it in 3 or 4 locations around the planet. So pulling the plug is going to be difficult, not impossible, but difficult, the way these guys are using their cash to make sure they stay ahead of the sheriff. So we've got our work cut out for us here, is the message.
But the question is, who's zooming who, for me? Are the Chinese going to end up taking advantage of these Silicon Valley bozos, or...
No, I think it's the other way around.
That's what I was going to say.
I think working the Chinese.
I think they're just going to... China, we can wipe out their currency in a minute. We can wipe out their stock market in a minute. We can, and we absolutely do, control their entire economy with whether or not we purchase from them. And now they want to use our technology, or at least mimics of it, and then create people like Jack Ma. But what they do is the best people in the stock market die, and then they absorb their money back into the collective. So Jack Ma and all these other Chinese oligarchs are in hiding once they come out of China with a lot of money. Just like that actress recently who disappeared for a while. She owed some money, so she had to come back and, pay a lot of money to get back into being able to come out in public. That shows you the control they have over people. And it's not an accident that these Chinese oligarchs come to America and all live in the same place in New York. And they have to have the greatest protection, or else they're simply killed and their assets are absorbed back into the collective. I don't know how anybody thinks they're going to get away with doing anything that has to do with personal greed in China, because China doesn't do anything for personal reasons. It's all about the collective.
I think it's not the communists. I think it's the bankers. And I've had some experience with the communist countries. So what I think we need is a Manhattan-type project on data privacy and security. And we need to get our best minds on this subject. Because what we've had are very greedy, selfish, self-centered, power-hungry people that have driven this technology to its ultimate destination, which is an attempt to control humanity. We've got to stop that. We've got to have a Manhattan-type project, and we've got to rethink this whole thing and put it on a firm footing. Right now, it's shifting sand.
Well, Michael, can we uncouple from the existing systems?
Well, the answer from an engineering viewpoint is, of course, you can once you identify the problem. But right now we're all using these systems, and so we've got to be careful on how we turn them off or reorient them. Otherwise, we'll break the whole thing, and we don't. And I'm assuming we don't want to do that, because that will go into a digital dark age. So what we need is a group of people to come together who have morality, who believe in privacy, who believe in security, and who believe in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, to sit down and hammer this out. Because no one person has all the knowledge that's required to kind of think up something new and do this. I mean, these guys have been evolving this system for 20, 30, 40 years. So we've got to look at that system, and we've got to figure out how to do triage immediately, to start moving us back away from this cliff's edge. And then we'll start re-engineering the way these systems are built, so that we include in all these layers respect for people, respect for privacy, respect for the Bill of Rights. That's what we've got to do.
Absolutely. I'm encouraged by Trump saying the words antitrust, monopoly, George Soros money. I mean, he's pointing out the directions that we need to look. And it seems to me like some people are going to have to be indicted and convicted and go to jail. And there's going to have to be RICO charges brought against the IBM Eclipse Foundation. I don't see how, without a confrontation to the very people like an Eric Schmidt, who seems to think that he is above all law and can do whatever he wants, and basically, be very pleased with his new Dragonfly program that killed 750,000 people just recently in the months that he was over there. And he's sitting back and he's very pleased. So he comes back to America, and he already has a program that controls our news called the News Digital Initiative. And it's basically controls what comes across the screen and filters it down and looks at the big data and makes sure that anybody who doesn't say what Avid, the teleprompter news creator that is run by ISIS management, whatever anybody says that isn't in agreement with the administrative program, Communist Party, Central Committee, whatever you want to call it, the Soviet Union of America, whatever you want to call it, then they get turned off. Now, we got to stop the turning off part. They want to say they can't turn off, but they can turn off anything they want because they're turning off all of their opposition right now. Well, many people have gone down by the demonetization of the people who were the citizen journalists who were trying to use this system for what it was designed by you and your good engineers to do, which is give out free information so that people can hear it from the fourth estate, so then the third estate, the people, can determine whether they want to put the second and the first estate in jail. I mean, that's really what it comes down to me.
Well, what we're seeing is the logical end result of where they started when they stole our technology. Because our approach was, if you host the data, you own it. But what they've done is they flipped that on its head and said, we are going to control the data, so we're going to own your data. And so this is the logical end result of that culture, which is, okay, since we own it all, we're going to control it all, and then we're going to control all the people that give it to us. So they're only doing what comes naturally, and it's quite sinful. It's the 7 deadly sins, and we just have to take control of the digital portion of our lives related to technology. We've let them do it up till now.
Well, yes, we did, but we did it unconsciously. People aren't as smart as you, Michael, so they didn't know what was going on. We're just a bunch of bozos going, no, I want something more convenient. Can't it go any faster? 5G, right. I don't care. Do they got 10G? It's like, right. We don't know. But if we would have known what you know now, which is early on, all of these patents were stolen and they were lumped together.
By the way, we're talking, when you say patents, what we need to do is expand that, because in most cases, they stole these things while they were still trade secrets, before they were patents. Now, some of them became patents. But the fact is, and I think that's confused some people, because they think, well, it's a patent, you can protect it. Well, no, they stole it when it was still on the drawing board in many cases, yes. Because they had access to all these systems through those digital keys.
Yes. Well, I would call that also industrial espionage, because I've had friends who invented things, and they were ready to go to production, and then their facilities burned down, and their prototypes are gone. This is very serious. They kill people. So when I say patents, you're right. I oftentimes misstate copyrights, patents, trade secrets, intellectual property, all of that, because to me, it's basically the creativity of you guys, the inventors and gals, all the inventors out there who are doing all this work. And then who is it? It's the people at the central area that control things like the Federal Bridge Certification Authority, or the Certification Authority keys, the cryptological keys to everything. Well, that would be Hillary. So from the beginning, we can see how a Hillary is created and stays in power to this same moment right now, in the same power that she was from the beginning when she started stealing all of these trade secrets and capitalizing on them. And that's the reason she can't be taken down and acts with impunity. And every person in the world knows she's guilty, but she doesn't go down. Why? Because, as you say, she has the ability to go in and mess with any data that she wants, and it's an information war. And once you get your information together, and it can be implanted digitally or disappear. By the way, that Clintons are famous for disappearing documents, aren't they? Now they can disappear digital documents. Oh, isn't that dandy? And so if she has these keys, which she works with Jerry C. Jones and the other bozos through Entrust and then Axion and AMS and all of its new ones, what's it called? The what?
IPG.
IPG. Mm-hmm. And what's the other one?
And then Ant Financial is a part of that.
And
so
the one about
we're
ramp?
seeing all these different activities around the digital box all coming together now in China.
I can't keep this name straight. What's the newest one? I heard you say today something ramp.
Ant Financial.
Yes, Ant. Oh, okay. Ant Financial, of course, and AMS and IPG, which was Axion, which was.
And Alibaba and Baidu, and I mean, there's a whole bunch of them now. They're all just sort of gathered around, but underneath is the same group of investors. That's what everybody's got to remember. And in China, these investors are all American largely, and everybody else is following along.
And that's John Breyer, the father.
James W. Breyer, John P. Breyer. IDG, Sequoia, Silicon Valley Bank, Matrix, Intel, Lightspeed, Mail.ru, the same players.
And so those corporate tech warlords don't mind killing millions of people as long as they get the contract in the short run with the Chinese. They don't mind what they do. I've always said we should not be doing business with China. That was the Clintons. The Clintons went in, Walmart went in, and they basically, that's where our manufacturing went. And so we shouldn't be doing business with them. They should have never been allowed into the World Trade Organization. They should never have been allowed most favored nation trading status. That was criminal on our part. The Chinese killed 20 million Tibetans. They are still committing pogroms. They are still killing millions of people. And right now, thanks to Eric Schmidt and Dragonfly, they just killed 750,000 Uyghurs in northwest China. I mean,
right.
Why would we do business with them? Why would we do business at all with a country that lies about everything, steals our IP, creates bad microchips, surveils everything, and makes sure that Hillary sends a courtesy copy of all 780,000 emails that are under question that the FBI can't find, but the Chinese have?
Well,
Why would
clearly
we do business
the
with
deal
them?
with China was cut a long time before we were aware of it.
And
it's
Dianne
just taken them
Feinstein
this long.
and Mitch McConnell and his wife. I mean, really, at what point do we say China is our enemy because China considers us their enemy now because we're manipulating their economy? And they don't like that. And they're getting to see the truth that, oh my goodness, we told Eric Schmidt to lie and say that Dragonfly isn't ready for 2 years, but in America they're talking about it, and they've made movies about it, and they're making us look like the totalitarian fascists that we are. Yes, that's so that we can join the resistance, as you called it, to stop this. We need to keep our free speech. We need to not turn into a Soviet American republic.
That's right.
And you're the guy who can help us decouple this. If Trump would simply sign the Miller Act, the dominoes would start to fall. And we could also transform the mainstream media, because that's nothing more than digital lies that are being created by people they don't even know who creates the news. No one knows who writes those. There's no bylines anymore. It's all the same news on all the stations, and no one knows who wrote it. Not one single person takes credit for a story, for any type of journalism, any pictures. No, it is produced by people like Strategic Communications Laboratories and whoever they've become now, because they folded in Britain, and they're the ones who manipulate elections. They're the ones who give us Avid, Lord
they've
Malloch
got
Brown.
about 40 different entities. So
I was going to say,
don't
I
you
don't want to
worry,
start.
they're still alive.
I don't want to start reeling them off, because I know it's astounding that they'll set up. When they set up one company, they set up 5, and then they set up 10 dummy companies to go to if any of those 5 go down in Britain. That's standard operating procedure, and they do it here in America too. Like, well, I won't go into naming names, but so Michael, let's wrap this up and think about how are we going to win this resistance? What is the linchpin?
I think that somebody in our government has got to start recognizing the creativity of our inventors in this country, and the rewards have to start coming to those inventors. We've kind of gone to sleep on protecting our creative class, and we've allowed these people to get away with it, and these people know that our government is letting them get away with it. So I think what you said is right. That's what we've tried to focus on is, okay, let's get this Miller Act funded, because the claim is something that the president can act on, and then let's use this cash to completely reconfigure how we use technology and start focusing on priorities that respect the human, respect the individual, and his or her rights to privacy and security. And in so doing, we will re-engineer all this that's out there right now, stealing all of that information. And that we have to stop. If we don't stop that, then there's really no point in pursuing any activity, because it will all just be stolen behind the scenes, and we won't know about it until it's already doing its damage. So we really have to get on with reconfiguring this engineering immediately.
That, you see, because you're an engineer, you could really see the linchpin. I couldn't see that. I think you're quite right. If they wouldn't have stole this stuff from you, they couldn't have turned it into the weaponized evil that it is with
right,
Silicon
because we
Valley.
would have been competitive. We would have offered a competitive offering, and presumably most people, when they have the choice between, here, take this one and we'll steal everything that you ever do, and take this and we'll respect that, what you going to pick? Of course you're going to pick the second one.
And real inventors would have morality instead of these cardboard cutout Silicon Valley warlord tech kings who are fake in most cases. They have no morality. They'll do what they're told. They put in the back doors. They put in the mechanical engine that controls it all. But as an inventor like yourself, you would have said, of course I'm not going to do that.
No, we're not. Is that something that would satisfy the golden rule? No. So therefore we won't do it. What would? And then you start asking those questions at every step of your engineering design, and then sooner or later you have a respectful system.
And thus you have the phrase of, is it Google, do no evil?
Yeah, well, that's a nice ruse, isn't it? Because they're doing exactly the opposite.
It's do Eric's evil. I mean, it's the exact opposite, as you say. It's kind of like net neutrality, which is anything but neutral. Michael, you hit the head of the nail perfectly with that hammer stroke, because what we need is to take back our inventions, our trade secrets, our patents,
and we've got to start protecting our idea flow. We've got to stop giving away our ideas, period, now.
Well, that's what it's all about. That's why China's our enemy right now. And that's why Hillary went to Russia and gave all our technology away, so that this nonsense could be globalism and internationalism instead of being the patriots that we should be in putting America first.
You know, this was exactly what was happening to our inventors back in 1776, and why the only property right actually written into the Constitution was the right for copyrights and patents.
We have
because
to
they were
start
getting
respecting that
ripped
again.
off by the British bankers at the time and the people with money, and they saw that as long as you had cash, you could buy off anybody you wanted to. So we had to have a government that was protecting the inventor. Invention always occurs in small groups or individuals. It never occurs in large corporations. And so they saw that, and they said, we've got to protect our inventors, because that's how we have a thriving economy. Our economy is dying because these ideas are not flowing anymore. Now, I understand our economy is better than it was, but that's not because the ideas are being protected. That's just because there was such a pent-up demand that a few good things created this boom we've had so far. But that won't continue unless we protect our ideas.
Well, your friends at Americans for Innovation have their timeline, and on that timeline is everything you need to know to convict these people, and everything you need to know to understand the significance of that linchpin that Michael just described. American innovation, that is the future, and it is a wealth that cannot even be calculated. If you look at the wealth that came out of your inventions and your trade secrets, it's in the trillions. And it could have been backed by morality instead of being backed by the same old evil cabal.
And these guys all know they're frauds.
Oh, of course they do. And just listen to them speak. I mean, dude Zuckerberg doesn't even know where he is. He knows nothing about what he is supposed to be the leader of. And to imagine that it's always the young person like Elon Musk who are the great geniuses, those are all fake people. They're fake. And they're not geniuses
at all.
They have
good press agents.
Yes, and they have to have the look, and they have to have the youth, and the myth that anybody can become a billionaire overnight because they can create a digital wonder. No, you won't, folks, because the military will take it unless you want to create it outside of America. And even then they may come and take it, because right now that system is not protected. One of our most basic rights in America, which is where our future is going. It is our future, and until we can take back the ability to give our innovators what they deserve, we really don't have a future in this digital world. We have a digital prison that's being built around us as we speak.
Right, and this latest push for blockchain is nothing but object-oriented databases, and we actually invented that in our system as well. So these guys haven't come up with an original thought since they stole my technology back in 2001.
And that's really pathetic. And yet, they look at the way they criminalized it on so many levels, and then made it more complicated, and then created these fake companies, and then put fakes at the head of them, and then they did fake manipulation on the stock market so they become billionaires. And now they're going to China, and I think they think they're going to manipulate China, but China's a dragon who eats anyone who really tries to mess with her. So good luck with that. And we hope that they go over there and that they don't come back and that they leave us alone so that we could get our free speech back. Michael, thanks for this conversation today. Everyone always loves hearing what you have to say, so we'll get this right out on the wire, and we'll be talking soon again about your other research that's coming up, because every day you tend to shock us with the revelations you bring forward.
Well, great to talk with you, Douglas, and say hello to Betsy.
I certainly will. Thank you again, Michael.